Hi everyone, welcome to another DS Layered show. My name is Josh Fletcher. In today's episode, I want to just cover a presentation and some videos that I presented for the New Zealand BI user group at the end of May this year. I promised to release the videos online, haven't got around to it for a few months, been travelling, but I thought I'd take the opportunity now to kind of recap the presentation and especially the video content that I presented. So in terms of what I covered, was really just introducing myself, touched on what predictive analytics is, and then how that relates to the SAP product, both predictive analysis and then also how it integrates with HANA and a predictive analysis library. I then went through several demos, which I'm going to cover with you, and then took some question and answers. So without further ado, the only other slide to show is the DS layered slide. If you're watching this video, then you probably have checked us out before, but if not, there are all the links for you. So what am I going to demonstrate? Well, I've got two videos to play with you for you today. The first is around loading some data into HANA and then doing some analysis with it with visual intelligence and predictive analysis. And I also want to flip between calling predictive algorithms with HANA as opposed to R and the performance and of those as well. So without any further ado, let's switch over to the video. And the first thing I've got here is a video of some retail item set data. So I'm just going to the end of the data services load. We effectively had to do some pivoting of some data I got off the internet, which is basically market basket analysis. So you have, you walk into a market and you buy 5 items. What we want to do is analyze those 5 items across many different orders to understand what our customers are buying together. And so what the target data set we're ending up with is basically an order ID, the item that they purchased, and how many items they purchased of that type in the order. So this is the entire data services job. It's quite a small job. I'm just going to execute this and it's going to load this data into HANA for me. And we can see there we ended up with 2.7 million records that we end up working with to put into HANA. So now I'll switch over to HANA Studio, and I've got a schema here of retail, and here's my retail item set table. And you can see there's our records, just a couple hundred records of a preview there for us. If we look at the items and how many items were bought, you can see in some cases we had one item that had over 50,000 purchases. And just to confirm, we'll also just check the row count of that table. And we can see there that we were working with 2.7 million records, and we've now got it down to about 900,000 after the pivoting as well. So the next step in terms of being able to use this data for my predictive analysis is to build an analytic view. It's not required with predictive analysis, but it just helps us reposition the data into a certain view that we can then consume. So I'm going to use that retail item set table in my analytic view, and I'm just going to use those 3 columns in my output. And we'll just tag them as whether they're dimensions or measures. This is effectively a virtual semantic layer that then Business Objects sees and the SAP Predictive Analysis tool sees to consume the information from. And all the aggregation is handled by HANA. Okay, so next step is to open up Predictive Analysis. This is the new tool from SAP that's been built on the Lumira engine. So you'll see it will look quite similar. What I need to do is connect to my data source, so that's HANA, and I'm using an online database, which means it'll actually, or online HANA instance, which means it'll push down a lot of the calculation and aggregation to HANA rather than doing it all in the client. So I'm going to connect to that analytic view that I just built, and you can see there's my measure and my items as well. If I try and visualize those, you can see there's the 50,000. If we just maybe look at the top 10 items, you can see there item 39, for instance, was bought over 50,000 times, item 48 over 40,000. So now I'm going to switch over to my predictive pane and apply an algorithm, which is the Priori algorithm, and this is really for doing the association analysis. I'm going to select which of the columns in my dataset is the item and which is the transaction ID column, or the order number in this case. I have some settings I can set around the support and confidence. These effectively control how often the rule has to appear in a dataset, and as well as within the pre-rule. So the first item we're looking at, how often does it get bought with this other item? So those allow us to control how much data we're actually analysing in terms of matches between multiple items. Now I'm going to go ahead and run that, and this is actually going to push down you can see that's already done, push that down to HANA to calculate those. You can see the results that we get is basically a pre-item, so what was the item we started with, and what was the post item. In some cases there might be multiple, so you can see here, for instance, at the middle we've got items 38 and 39 are more likely to be bought with items 36 and 48. I have some controls I can use to filter in terms of the confidence value. And then the other value we see there on the right is the lift, and that's really then a usefulness measure. If it's above 1, then it's useful. If it's less than 1, then it's probably not going to be useful. So with these three values, and there is a bit more detail to them obviously, you can actually determine how often a rule appears, which item's bought with another item, how often that happens, and how useful it is. So that was really quick example, but what I wanted to do is contrast that with using the same data set but locally. So the other option, if you don't have HANA, is to use predictive analysis with a local R engine. And so I'm going to use the same data set but a subset of it, because otherwise it would take too long. So I'm actually only using about a tenth of the size of records, 100,000 records. You can see there's the same kind of data, and I have to now create a measure from that. And I can now do my predict, but you can see here I'm now going to call an R a priori algorithm, not the HANA one. Very similar configuration, except now I can choose whether that's the input is going to be tabular or transactions. So I've got transactions. Again, choose my item and order. And again, set the confidence and support values. We're going to get slightly different results because obviously we're working with a subset. But just to give you an idea, the other one, when I clicked it, it was pretty much finished straight away. This one takes quite a bit longer. 30 seconds, and that's not that long, obviously, but it's still, you can see the difference between using HANA and the in-memory calculations being applied versus running it locally. Across the top there, you can see the other algorithms that are supported by predictive analysis, and in every new release of predictive analysis, more algorithms being added. And in fact, this was recorded with version 10, which doesn't support the generic R support as well. So you can now build your own R algorithms and use them. So you can see there, similar view, but this time we've got different rules that have come out as being useful for us to look at. And of course, we can use that result set now after we've run the predictive algorithm to then actually visualize that using the Lumira engine. Okay, now for our second video. In this case, I've got a different data set in my flight schema here in HANA, and I'm actually using flight data from the US, domestic flights. It ranges over, I think, about 13 years or something, and in every case we have basically one flight per row in our fact table, and we have the associated carrier, the destination and origin airports, as well as a lot of details about the flight, the tail number, the flight number, the hour they departed, the hour they landed, whether the flight got cancelled, whether it got delayed, what was the reason for the delay, or what was the reason for the cancellation. You can see here it's actually 123 million records, so not insignificant in the size of the data. And again, what we want to do is use an analytic view and then apply the predictive analysis tool to do some statistical modeling. So in this case, you can see the analytic view is a little bit more complex. And so I thought this was a good example to walk through about how this works. So you can see there I've got my airport table aliased because I need to recognize the origin and the destination as well as the carriers. I've also got there all the different output columns. And there's a lot of dimensions and a lot of measures that I can use in this data set. You can see there some of the examples. I've also built a second one that's going to be used for my time analysis. So this is really one row, the output of the analytic view is one row per month. And then I've got a lot of different measures for each of those periods. So let's switch over to the predictive analysis tool and connect to our data set. All these demos were done using the free HANA development environment that you can access on Amazon. You can just search for Access HANA Amazon on Google, and once you sign up with your SCN account, then you can get access to the instance on HANA and then run that. So that's all I've done here. You can see there, if I'm looking at over time, it's from 1987 through to 2008, so it's actually probably 19 years actually. And you can see there the diversions and the flight counts, and you can see there definitely around September 11 how the flights dropped off significantly during the few months after that that period. So now what I want to do is apply a time series algorithm. You can see I dropped in a bit quick, but we're basically going to apply some trending to our data set. We're going to look at diversions, and we're going to do that for months. We then put in our start, year, and period. And what this allows us to do is effectively smooth the time series for visualization purposes. We can control the amount of smoothing via the alpha property. So if we now just execute that, and remember this is based on 123 million records, that's all been rolled up by HANA. I can now visualize that and even get that data set out. So if I wanted to apply or generate some kind of visualization based on that overall time period, I could do that using this tool. And you can see there, even though it's quite a jagged amount of diversions per month, we've been able to create a very smooth line of that. And that data, underlying data, we could access from here, either exporting it out to a CSV file or loading it back into HANA in a new table, so that we could then work with it. And again, if we alter that alpha value, you'll see it affect the spikiness of the smooth line. Each of the predictive algorithms that we apply have different charts that show different visualizations based on what the algorithm is doing for you. And so you can see that spike is now a bit more jagged. Oh, sorry, that line is a bit more jagged. The other example I wanted to look at was clustering algorithm. So again, we're going to connect to that same data set, but using a different analytic view. Our airport one here, which basically has one record per airport, and the flight counts, the departures, the diversions, that kind of thing. The clustering algorithm allows us to take those multiple measures and analyze them to come up with smart clusters of airports in this case. So I choose the columns that I want to take into account when I'm determining my cluster. I also specify how many clusters I want to generate. So in this case it's 5. You see that I'm looking at security, arrival, and departure delays. all different reasons for delays of flights. Again, I execute that, and this is pushing that down and applying stored procedures at the HANA level from the predictive analysis library that's built into HANA to that data set, and then returning the results to me. And here's my charting on those clusters, both the cluster size, so how many airports in each cluster. You can see there's one main cluster, cluster 5, so that'd be all the most common airports all grouped together. And then I'd want to look at clusters 1, 2, 3, 4, and I understand why they have been grouped together. And that can help me determine how I treat these airports going forward. If it might even be something like customers. You then understand customer behaviour based on spending frequency and the amount they spend and that kind of thing. Really useful to do rather than just grouping elements into region or things that we're maybe just maybe simple groupings. In this case, being able to actually apply some smart grouping to that. So that was the demo I presented at the New Zealand BI user group at the end of May. I also provide a lot of links that I'll put in the show notes. The HANA Startup Program, which is based on HANA in the cloud, how to access your own HANA server. The HANA Academy has a lot of useful videos, and that's how I've started to learn about these algorithms and how they work. There's a webcast on Introduction to Predictive Analysis. There's also multiple ways of learning R, which is the underlying engine if you're using an offline data set and not HANA. And that basically is providing a front-end tool to pass in the information to R and then applying the R algorithms. But you can also teach yourself R as well if you're really interested in it. Here's my contact details. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about this video, or if you have any ideas of other videos you think would be interesting. And hope you enjoy the Dilbert as well. So thanks for joining us today, and I'll see you at the next episode. Thank you.
This podcast is hosted and sponsored by EV Technologies. Visit us on the net at savethecms.com.
D-Slayer!